I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Chris Vermeulen, his website, thegoldandoilguy.com. Welcome back to the show, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
The equity markets are really exploding. The Dow gaining 2% in 2 days, its highest rise in quite some time. The NASDAQ setting a record high, hitting the 6,000-point mark. What's happening with those markets?
Yeah, well, in the last couple of days, we've just seen the equities market gap higher and just continue to expand and run up. And really, we're seeing a big unwinding. We've seen the equities market as a whole really consolidate with a big ABC, kind of a three-wave correction, which is a very bullish formation. And the big question was, were we going to see a little bit more selling and really kind of flush the market out for a more of a complex pullback, or was the ABC correction enough and we're going to see the market start to run to new highs? And obviously we've seen some huge accumulation in equities overall, and the NASDAQ hitting new highs, and we're seeing really everything just muscle its way up and continue to rally. So, I think we've seen record highs on the NASDAQ. I think we're going to see record highs here on the SP 500, and we're getting pretty close to the 2,400 mark, which was a high we put back in March. And I think if we break that high, I think actually we're starting a pretty significant run here. We're going to see 2,500 on the SP 500, which is about 115 points away from where we are today. So money is kind of in the risk-on mode. The opposite is what we've seen over the last couple of months. Everybody's piling into equities and flowing out of all the other safe havens.
Gold taking a bit of a drop, but gold had a bit of a rise going over the last few weeks.
Yeah, well, gold, there's been a lot of fear, a lot of things kind of going on that really are bullish for gold. And, we've got missiles and we've got all these different things kind of taking place, what's going on with Trump, and the fear that the equities market was very pessimistic. It looked like the sentiment was very fearful. And so that puts people going into the safe haven places like bonds and metals, utilities, things like that. And really we're seeing that unwind. And yes, it was really interesting yesterday. We saw the U.S. dollar take a huge haircut, and we saw gold fall with it as well, which is pretty interesting. Usually we don't see both of them down 1% more or less on a day together. But money is flowing out of metals, which were the safe haven last week. This week they are not the safe haven, and I think we're going to see a fairly significant pullback because the equities market looks prime for a very significant rally here, which means there's a lot of time here for the unwinding of everyone who's been rotating into these safe havens like gold to start unwinding and selling some of their gold and moving into equities that are pushing higher.
Looks like relief around the planet that a moderate seems to be the most likely to take the French presidency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely, I think, having a pretty big impact on the market. And, the momentum to the upside here is really strong. We've seen two big gaps to the upside this week. Big kind of back-to-back 1% gain days. For small cap stocks are on fire, like the Russell 2000. Money is just kind of really piling into the equities market. And, there's been a multi-month consolidation, or kind of like a healthy pause in the equities market. And the market's just starting to break to new highs in several leading sectors and indexes here. And, after a consolidation of this size, a 100-point move on the SP 500 is, it looks very, very obtainable. And I think there's a lot of money kind of rotating right into equities, anticipating a bigger run now. And it's going to play out here for probably a month and a half.
Traditionally, we've heard sell in May, go away. Is that going to happen this time if this trend continues?
Yeah, you and I talked about that, I think, in our last interview, and we were talking about how I think the sell in April, it was going to be the sell in April and more or less the buy in May, and we could see that in the VIX and with the safe havens. We saw safe havens rising really this month, and we saw equities sell off. We saw the VIX spike up really big, indicating there's a ton of fear in the market. And I think we saw all that selling, that fear really come into the market, maybe anticipating the sell in May. And but it actually ended up putting, I think the bottom is in, and the markets are starting to rip to new highs. And so I think we're going to have a very strong May. I think we're going to have a strong June. And I think things become pretty choppy mid-year in the second half of the year for equities. But we've got a big run here ahead of us, I think, going forward to the summer here.
We'll have more with Chris Vermeulen right after the break.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Chris Vermeulen. Chris, the story with oil is it's been going down. It's below $50 a barrel again. Is it softer than many people thought it would be right now?
Yeah, if you look at the weekly chart or the monthly chart of crude oil, we went into a big bear market back in 2014, sold off really and didn't bottom out till 2016. It was a 2-year kind of selling spree. And we formed a massive basing formation, or we are forming a massive basing formation, a launch pad, if you will. And in the grand scheme of things, if you zoom out the chart and you look over the last, half a year, we're trading in a fairly large range. From the recent lows that we saw a few weeks ago, down around the $47, $46 per barrel, all the way up to around the $54, $53 per barrel. We could easily oscillate in that range for several months. And if we break below the low that we saw about a month ago or so, 5 weeks ago, that 46 level, then we're going to go right down and test that 43, which is a target you and I talked about in our last conversation. But if we do break to the upside and close above $54 per barrel, we're going to see a significant rally in crude oil, and it's going to move right up to the 60 mark fairly quickly. So right now, crude oil is range-bound in a very long 2-year kind of major formation that's been forming here, the big basing formation. So it's right in the middle of its trading range. So I don't see any real insight into where crude oil is. Really, you're looking for one of these significant breakouts that's going to be to the upside or the downside, and a strong close above or below those critical levels, and then you should be able to see follow-through and see a multi-week sell-off or a multi-week rally, depending on which way it breaks.
Saudi Arabia is encouraging its OPEC fellow mates to, again, freeze their production for, I guess I haven't said how long, but perhaps another 6 months. But on the other hand, you have American frackers who literally can just turn on the taps anytime they feel like it. Yeah,
production keeps going up, and they can turn the valve on pretty quick and start producing it. That's kind of a wild card. You never really know what's going on. Obviously, companies still need to produce in order to sell crude oil to make money, or else they'll definitely go broke. So nobody wants to just shut everything down. But obviously, it's tough when you're not making much money or any money. As it really makes sense to have all that stuff going on? So it's kind of a wild card, the whole production thing, and what OPEC and all those other countries are planning on doing. It's kind of just a total wild card. And if you look at the charts, we've got a pretty big formation here. There's 2 great setups. Whichever way it breaks out, I think is going to provide a great opportunity for a 2 to 3 week very strong move in the market. and then eventually set up for another move. We just take it kind of one bar at a time and one setup at a time. Right now, crude oil is, to me, just in limbo and has some work to do before it has a setup.
China's industrial output hit a record high, or its best output in the last 4 years. Obviously, China's still a big consumer of oil.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and if you look at the Chinese stock market too, like it had a massive bear market in 2015, bottomed out in early last year, and it's forming a very strong basing formation. And we might see that market might be coming back to life, and we could see it really pick up speed here, depending if it breaks out of this basing formation. And if so, that could be a leading indicator that that economy might pick up speed and actually, it could start to consume even more. So it's going to be interesting to see how oil moves this year, because we've got huge price formations on multiple different, on crude oil, on the U.S. dollar, and global markets, all the stock markets. Everything's got a fairly large pattern, and whichever way they all break is going to have a significant effect on what the other one does. So it's kind of a domino effect, and we'll see which way things break and how they start to run. So
we'll have more with Chris Vermeulen right after this.
Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're chatting with Chris Vermeulen. The U.S. says it wants to put tariffs on Canadian softwood lumber up to 24% in some cases. What has that done to lumber stocks?
Yeah, lumber stocks have been on fire. Pretty much in January or February there of 2016, lumber stocks put in a bottom. They put in a significant rally, and they've in the last 2 weeks we've seen lumber stocks just take off in price, and they're moving to more or less all-time highs, most of them. So it's really, really bullish for, I think, the lumber companies at this point. Money is piling into those stocks, and it's breaking to new highs. There's an ETF called CUT. The CUT is the symbol, and it holds a basket of lumber stocks. Even though lumber prices are down, the ETF that holds the lumber stocks, the stocks are actually up and hitting all-time highs. So really strong chart pattern at this point. It put in a major low and a basing formation. It's breaking to new highs, so it's got potential to continue to run, and it could move up significantly from where it is still.
And U.S. new home sales are unexpectedly high as well.
Yeah, and the lumber prices, the higher lumber prices is really eventually going to kind of trickle into the whole home sales and the cost of homes. Obviously real estate has been on fire. Feels like we are in some pretty major bubbles in certain areas of the country, but home prices continue to rise, and if lumber prices get jacked up, it means it costs more to build a house. That means houses that are already built are now technically worth more because they cost more to replace. So this is just like, to me, this is one of the worst things you could do. We're already in a housing kind of bubble, and now they're throwing on this extra gasoline onto the fire to help jack into the housing price even higher. So, I think things could get very ugly with how homes being overpriced and, interest rates being really low. If rates do creep up a little bit more, continue to grind slowly higher, and lumber prices go up, eventually we're going to see, a little bit of a pop in a bubble, and we're going to see how home prices fall back down. But there's a huge delay. The housing market is very slow moving. It plateaus. It can plateau for a decade, and then suddenly, boom, home prices double in 2 or 3 years, which is what we've seen. And it takes a long time for interest rates to really directly affect the market and for that kind of to lose momentum. So I think we've got the housing market will still be strong for probably another year or two, but eventually that momentum, which I think will start to stall out, later this year. It'll continue to grind up, but we're going to see deflation kind of in home prices, I think, in a few years.
The U.S. Home Builders Association is on Canada's side when it comes to softwood tariffs, saying the higher cost of lumber for them could cost 3,000 American jobs. It's not helping America, it's hurting.
Yeah. I know everybody's got their priorities, and some people just don't care about jobs, and they just look at numbers and policies, all that stuff. So yeah, it's that's not good. The economy, we don't need to lose more jobs by any means. It seems like there's a record amount of people unemployed right now, and to lose more just isn't good, obviously. Trump
probably doesn't understand how integrated the Canadian and U.S. economies are. My widget needs a widget from the States, and their blitznag needs a conumum from Quebec. So,
yeah.
Apparently they've said an object being made mutually in Canada and the U.S. crosses the border 6 or 7 times. You start slapping tariffs and duties on it. It's going to cost jobs on both sides of the border, not create them.
Yeah, I agree. I think he probably doesn't realize how much these two countries work together. And, I only heard a quick glimpse. I heard him talking about something about how Canadians are ripping them off for dairy and how we're a disgrace or something. I just caught a quick flash of the radio. It just blows my mind. Everything to him is so extreme, so instantly, and it's he always has to make everything sound so terrible. Yeah, he's a wild card, no doubt.
Well, Chris, it makes for interesting times, and that's why we do these shows.
It does, for sure.
Chris, thank you so much for taking time out of your vacation to speak with us.
Hey, thanks, Jim. Always a pleasure.
My guest has been Chris Vermeulen. His website, thegoldandoilguy.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us, and if you have any questions for our show, you can email us at info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.